The law office of Morrison and Associates sat on the 42nd floor of the Pemberton building, overlooking the bustling streets of downtown Chicago. The waiting room was decorated in muted grays and whites, designed to project calm professionalism. But Emma Sinclair felt anything except calm as she smoothed down the front of her navy wrap dress for the third time in as many minutes. The fabric stretched across the prominent curve of her belly, impossible to hide despite her careful choice of clothing. 6 months pregnant. The reality still felt surreal some mornings when she woke up alone in her small apartment. So different from the penthouse she had shared with Julian. Her attorney, Patricia Hoffman, a sharp woman in her 50s with steel gray hair and kind eyes, touched Emma's arm gently. "Are you ready? We can wait a few more minutes if you need to collect yourself." Emma shook her head, forcing steel into her spine. "No, let's get this over with. I just want to sign the papers and move on with my life." "What?" Patricia nodded, though concern flickered across her features. She pushed open the heavy oak door to the conference room, and Emma followed, her heels clicking against the marble floor. The room was spacious, dominated by a long mahogany table that could seat 20 people. Today, only a handful of chairs were occupied. Julian's attorney, a man named Gregory Walsh, who looked like he charged $1,000 just to breathe in his direction, sat on the far side. Next to him was an empty chair, and then Julian walked in. Emma's breath caught despite her best efforts to remain impassive. He looked different. Thinner, perhaps, with shadows under his dark brown eyes that she had never seen during their marriage. His black suit was impeccable as always, but there was something disheveled about him. As if the man inside the expensive clothing was falling apart, their eyes met across the table. For a moment, the world seemed to stop spinning. Emma saw shock, confusion, and something that looked like hope flicker across his face. Then his gaze dropped, inevitably, to her stomach. Julian froze completely. His face went pale, then flushed, his mouth opening and closing without sound. He looked like a man who had just been struck by lightning. Akema. Her name came out as barely a whisper. "You're pregnant." She had practiced this moment 1,000 times in her mind. She had imagined herself cool, collected, utterly in control. But the raw emotion in his voice cracked something inside her chest. "Observant as always," she replied, her tone clipped and professional. She sat down carefully, grateful for the chair's support. Julian remained standing, his hands gripping the back of his chair so tightly his knuckles turned white. "How far along are you?" 6 months. Emma kept her eyes on the stack of divorce papers in front of her, refusing to look at him directly. "Can we proceed with the signing?" "I have another appointment this afternoon. 6 months." Julian's voice was hoarse. He did the math quickly, his face transforming through a series of emotions. Shock. Realization. Anguish. "That means when I called you. When I asked for the divorce, you were already pregnant." Emma's jaw tightened. That phone call. The worst moment of her entire life, even worse than losing her parents in a car accident when she was 19. She had been in New York for a week-long conference, excited to come home and share her news. The pregnancy test had been positive just 2 days before she left, and she had planned an elaborate reveal for Julian's birthday. Instead, she had received a cold, emotionless phone call. "Emma, I want a divorce. This isn't working anymore. My attorney will contact yours." No explanation. No discussion. Just a door slammed in her face and a dial tone. "Yes," she said finally, her voice tight. "I was 10 weeks pregnant when you decided our marriage was over." Julian's legs seemed to give out. He collapsed into his chair, his face buried in his hands. "Oh God, Emma, I didn't know. You have to believe me, I didn't know." What difference would it have made? The words came out sharper than she intended, years of hurt and anger bubbling to the surface. "You threw away our marriage like it was nothing. You didn't even have the decency to tell me to my face. It wasn't like that." Julian looked up, and Emma was startled to see tears in his eyes. Julian Bennett, the man who commanded boardrooms and negotiated million-dollar deals without breaking a sweat, was crying. "Emma, please. Is the baby mine?" The question hung in the air like a bomb. Patricia placed a warning hand on Emma's arm, but Emma ignored her. "How dare you?" Emma's voice was low and dangerous. "You leave me without explanation, disappear from my life completely. And now you have the audacity to question whether I was unfaithful? That's not what I meant." Julian stood again, agitated, running his hands through his dark hair until it stood on end. "I just need to know. Please, Emma, is this baby mine?" Emma stood as well, her hands protectively cradling her belly. The baby kicked, as if sensing her distress. "You had your chance to be part of this, Julian? You made your choice 6 months ago when you decided I wasn't worth fighting for. That's not true." Julian moved around the table and both attorneys tensed. "Emma, you don't understand. I left because I had to. I left to protect you. Protect me." Emma laughed, a bitter sound. "You destroyed me. Do you have any idea what it was like? Finding out I was pregnant and being so happy, so excited to tell you, only to have you rip the ground out from under me. I cried for weeks, Julian. I lost 12 pounds because I couldn't eat. My doctor was concerned about the baby's development because of the stress." Julian's face crumpled. "I'm so sorry. God, Emma, I'm so sorry. But you have to understand, I didn't have a choice. Someone threatened you. They said if I didn't end our marriage, they would kill you." The conference room went silent. Even the attorneys stared at Julian in shock. Emma felt dizzy, her vision swimming. Patricia quickly pushed her back into her chair. "What are you talking about?" Emma whispered. Julian pulled out his phone with shaking hands, scrolling through old emails. "3 days before I called you, I received this." He placed the phone on the table, sliding it toward Emma. She picked it up, reading the message on the screen. The email was brief and chilling. No pleasantries, no signature, just a stark message and an attachment. "End your marriage to Emma Sinclair within 48 hours, or she dies. This is not a negotiation." Emma opened the attachment with trembling fingers. It was a series of photographs. Her leaving her office building, her getting coffee at her favorite cafe, her walking through the park near their penthouse. Every photo had a red crosshair digitally added over her face. "I hired a security firm immediately," Julian continued, his voice breaking. "They traced the email to an encrypted server bounced through 7 different countries. Whoever sent it was a professional. I couldn't risk ignoring it, Emma. I couldn't risk your life." Emma stared at the photos, her mind reeling. "So you just decided to leave me? Without telling me? Without giving me a choice? I thought if I pushed you away, if you hated me, you'd be safe. I had security watching you around the clock, but from a distance. You never knew they were there." Julian wiped his eyes roughly. "I've been going insane these past 6 months. Emma, seeing you from afar, making sure you were safe. But not being able to talk to you, touch you, hold you, you should have told me." Emma's voice cracked, tears streaming down her face. "You should have let me decide. We could have gone to the police, hired protection together, left the city. Anything but this. I know." Julian reached across the table, his hand hovering over hers, but not quite touching. "I know I handled it wrong. I was terrified, and I made the worst decision of my life. But Emma, please, that baby you're carrying, is it mine?" Emma looked at him through her tears. She saw the man she had fallen in love with 3 years ago at a charity gala, where he had spilled champagne on her dress and then spent the entire evening trying to make it up to her. She saw the man who had proposed on a rooftop under the stars, who had cried when they exchanged vows, who had held her through nightmares about losing her parents. But she also saw the man who had broken her heart so completely that she had considered not keeping the baby. Afraid she couldn't raise a child alone? "Yes," she whispered finally. "The baby is yours, Julian. I got pregnant during our anniversary trip to Napa Valley, 2 weeks before you called. I was going to surprise you when I got back from New York." Julian's face transformed. Joy, guilt, love, and pain all warred for dominance. He moved around the table and dropped to his knees beside Emma's chair, his hands hovering over her belly, but not quite touching. "May I?" he asked softly. Emma hesitated, then nodded. Julian placed his large hands gently on her stomach. The baby kicked immediately, a strong thump against his palm. Julian let out a sob, pressing his forehead against her belly. "I'm so sorry," he whispered. "I'm so sorry. To both of you." Emma's hands moved involuntarily to his hair, the familiar texture bringing back a flood of memories. But then she pulled away, forcing herself to be strong. "I can't do this, Julian. I can't just forgive you because you had good intentions. You took away my choice. You made me believe I wasn't enough, that you didn't love me anymore. Do you know what that did to me?" Julian looked up at her, his face wet with tears. "Let me make it right. Please, Emma. Let me prove that I never stopped loving you. Let me be there for you and our baby." "I don't know if I can trust you again." Emma stood, putting distance between them. "You're the father of my child, and I won't keep you from the baby. But us, I don't know if there's an us anymore." Patricia cleared her throat gently. "Perhaps we should postpone the divorce proceedings. Given this new information, there are custody arrangements to consider, child support to discuss." "No," Emma shook her head firmly. "I don't want child support. I have a good job, and I've been saving. I can provide for my baby. Julian can have visitation rights, but I need time to process all of this. Emma, please don't do this." Julian stood, desperation clear in every line of his body. "I made a terrible mistake, but it came from love. Everything I did was to keep you alive, and everything you did nearly destroyed me." Emma picked up her purse, suddenly exhausted. "I need to go. Patricia, we'll reschedule." "Wait." Julian grabbed her arm gently, then immediately released it when she flinched. "At least tell me if you're still in danger. Whoever sent that threat, they might still be out there." Emma paused at the door, her hand on the frame to steady herself. The baby was kicking frantically now, sensing her stress. "Then I guess you'd better figure out who sent it," she said quietly. "Because I'm not going to live in fear, and I'm not going to let fear dictate my life the way you did. If someone wants to hurt me, they'll have to try. But I won't be controlled by threats or by you." She walked out, leaving Julian standing in the conference room, looking like a man who had just lost everything again. Emma's hands trembled as she unlocked the door to her apartment. The small two-bedroom space in Lincoln Park was a far cry from the penthouse she had shared with Julian, but it was hers. She had signed the lease with her own money, furnished it with her own choices, and built a life here that belonged to no one but herself. She dropped her purse on the kitchen counter and moved to the living room, sinking onto the couch with a heavy sigh. The baby was still active, tumbling and kicking inside her. Emma placed both hands on her belly, taking slow, deep breaths the way her prenatal yoga instructor had taught her. "It's okay, little one," she whispered. "Mama's okay. We're okay." But was she? The revelation from the divorce proceedings had shaken her to her core. For 6 months, she had built a narrative in her mind. Julian had grown tired of her. He had found someone else. He had decided that marriage was too constraining for a man of his wealth and status. The explanations had been painful, but at least they made sense. Now everything was different. Julian had left to protect her. Someone had threatened to kill her, and he had carried that burden alone, making the worst decision imaginable in the process. Her phone buzzed. Emma glanced at the screen and saw Julian's name. She had blocked his number months ago, but apparently he had gotten a new one. The text message was simple. "Please let me explain everything. I have information you need to know. You're still in danger." Emma stared at the message for a long moment, then deleted it. She couldn't deal with Julian right now. She needed space to think, to process, to decide what came next. The apartment intercom buzzed, making her jump. Emma pushed herself up from the couch and walked to the panel by the door. "Yes." "Miss Sinclair, there's a gentleman here to see you. Says his name is Detective Frank Morrison with the Chicago PD." Emma's heart rate spiked. "Send him up." She opened the door a crack, leaving the chain lock engaged, and waited. A few minutes later, a man in his late 40s appeared in the hallway. He was average height with graying hair and tired eyes, wearing a rumpled suit and carrying a badge. "Ms. Sinclair? I'm Detective Morrison. I need to speak with you about Julian Bennett and a threat made against your life. Moss's stomach dropped. She unhooked the chain and opened the door fully. Come in. The detective entered, his eyes sweeping the apartment with professional assessment. Emma gestured to the couch and they both sat down. Mr. Bennett came to the police station 2 hours ago. Detective Morrison began pulling out a small notebook. He brought evidence of a threat made against you 6 months ago. He also claims he has new information suggesting the threat is still active. What kind of new information? Emma's voice was barely steady. The detective's expression was grim. 3 days ago, Mr. Bennett received another email. Same encrypted source, same professional setup. This one said, "Divorce isn't enough. She knows too much. Handle it or we will." Emma felt the blood drain from her face. I don't understand. I don't know anything. I'm a financial analyst. I work with corporate portfolios and investment strategies. What could I possibly know that would make someone want to hurt me? That's what we're trying to figure out. Detective Morrison leaned forward. Mr. Bennett mentioned that you used to work for Carlyle Industries before you went freelance. Is that correct? Yes. I worked there for 3 years, right out of college. Richard Carlyle was my direct supervisor. Emma frowned, trying to see the connection. But I left that company 5 years ago. I've had no contact with them since. Mr. Bennett believes Richard Carlyle is behind the threats. The name hit Emma like a physical blow. Richard Carlyle. She hadn't thought about him in years, had actively tried to forget the uncomfortable final months at Carlyle Industries. Why would Richard want to hurt me? Emma asked, though even as the words left her mouth, a memory surfaced. Something she had seen, something she had dismissed as a mistake. Detective Morrison watched her carefully. Mr. Bennett says, Carlyle Industries and Bennett Properties have been competing for a major downtown development contract. The city is planning to revitalize the entire waterfront district. It's a multi-billion-dollar project. Bennett was the frontrunner until 6 months ago when he suddenly withdrew his company from consideration. Let me guess, Emma said bitterly. Right after he got the first threat? Exactly. Carlyle Industries won the contract by default. But now there's an audit. The city council received an anonymous tip that Carlyle's financials don't add up. If the audit uncovers fraud, the contract goes back up for bid. Emma's mind was racing, pieces clicking together, and Julian thinks that if they kill me, it somehow helps Richard. Mr. Bennett believes you witnessed something when you worked at Carlyle Industries, something that could expose fraud or criminal activity. He thinks Carlyle has been worried about you for years, and when you married a direct competitor, that worry turned into action. Emma stood abruptly, pacing the small living room. The baby kicked hard, and she winced, pressing a hand to her side. This is insane. I was a junior analyst. I barely saw the executive-level financials. Think Miss Sinclair? Is there anything you remember? Anything unusual or suspicious? Emma closed her eyes, reaching back through 5 years of memories. Her time at Carlyle Industries had been miserable. Richard Carlyle had been a demanding boss, often inappropriate, making comments about her appearance and finding excuses to keep her late at the office. She had been relieved when she finally saved enough to go freelance. And then she remembered. Oh, God, Emma whispered, her eyes flying open. The offshore accounts. Detective Morrison sat up straighter. What offshore accounts? It was my last week at the company. Richard asked me to verify some wire transfers. He said it was routine, just checking that the amounts matched the invoices. But when I pulled up the records, I noticed that several transfers were going to shell companies in the Cayman Islands. The amounts were huge, millions of dollars, but the invoices were for office supplies and equipment maintenance. What did you do? I told Richard there must be a mistake. He got very angry, said I was overstepping my authority and looking at files I shouldn't have access to. He took my computer and said he would handle it personally. Emma's hands were shaking. I thought I was going to be fired, but the next day, he was friendly again, almost too friendly. He gave me a generous severance package when I left and made me sign a non-disclosure agreement about all company business. Detective Morrison was writing rapidly. Do you remember the names of the shell companies? Any details about the transactions? Emma shook her head. It was 5 years ago. I remember thinking the names were strange. Something about Summit Holdings and Cascade Enterprises, but I can't be sure. That's enough to start with. The detective stood. Miss Sinclair, I need you to understand the seriousness of this situation. If Richard Carlisle has been committing fraud on the scale, Mr. Bennett suspects, and if he believes you can testify against him, you're in significant danger. What am I supposed to do? Go into hiding? I have a job. A life. I'm having a baby in 3 months. Emma's voice rose with panic. We're going to assign protection to you, 24-hour surveillance. And I strongly recommend you allow Mr. Bennett to hire private security as well. I know you two are going through a divorce, but he genuinely seems concerned for your safety. Emma wanted to argue, to insist she could handle this herself, but the baby kicked again, a reminder that it wasn't just her life at stake anymore. Fine, she said quietly, but I want to be kept informed of everything. I'm not going to be left in the dark again. Detective Morrison handed her his card. Call me if you remember anything else, or if anything unusual happens. And Ms. Sinclair? Be careful who you trust. After the detective left, Emma sat in the growing darkness of her apartment, not bothering to turn on the lights. Her phone buzzed again. Another message from Julian's new number. Please, Emma, let me help keep you safe. I know I don't deserve your trust, but our baby deserves parents who are alive. Emma stared at the message for a long time. Then, against every instinct, telling her to keep her walls up, she typed a response. Come over tomorrow morning, 9 o'clock. We need to talk. The reply came instantly. Thank you. I'll be there. I love you, Emma. I never stopped. Emma didn't respond to that. She couldn't. Love wasn't enough when trust had been shattered. The next morning, Julian arrived exactly at 9, carrying coffee and a bag from Emma's favorite bakery. He looked like he hadn't slept, his suit wrinkled and his eyes bloodshot. I didn't know if you were still drinking coffee, he said hesitantly, standing in the doorway. So I brought decaf and some of those blueberry muffins you love. Emma stepped aside to let him in. I can have 1 cup of regular coffee a day. The doctor said, it's fine. They sat at her small kitchen table, the space feeling cramped with Julian's presence. He was a tall man, well over 6 feet, and he seemed to fill every available inch of her apartment. Detective Morrison came to see me yesterday, Emma began, wrapping her hands around the warm coffee cup. He told me about the new threat. About Richard Carlisle. Julian nodded. I should have gone to the police 6 months ago. I should have done a lot of things differently. Emma, I've spent every day since I called you regretting that decision. If I could go back and change it, I would, but you can't. Emma's voice was flat. And now, we're both in this mess. Tell me everything, Julian. Every detail. I deserve to know what's happening. For the next hour, Julian laid out everything he knew. The original threat, his decision to end the marriage, the security team he had hired to watch Emma from a distance, his withdrawal from the waterfront development project, and then the new threat that had arrived 3 days ago. I've been working with my own investigators, Julian explained. We've been digging into Carlisle's finances. Emma, the man is running a massive fraud operation. He's been using his real estate company to launder money for a criminal organization. The offshore accounts you saw 5 years ago. That was just the beginning. We think he's moved over $200 million in the past decade. Emma felt sick. And he thinks I can expose him? You're the only person outside his inner circle who's ever seen evidence of the offshore transfers. When you married me, someone who was actively competing with him, he panicked. He probably figured I might convince you to look into his company, or that you might mention what you saw years ago. So he threatened to kill me to force you out of the development deal and to keep me quiet. Emma shook her head in disbelief. This is insane, I know. Julian reached across the table, his hand hovering near hers. But we can stop him, Emma. The city audit is going to uncover irregularities. If we can prove you saw evidence of fraud 5 years ago, if you can testify about what you witnessed, we can take him down and put an even bigger target on my back. Emma pulled her hand away. I'm pregnant, Julian. I can't be going to court testifying against dangerous criminals. I won't have to do it alone. I'll hire the best security team in the country. We'll get you into protective custody if necessary. I'll do whatever it takes to keep you and our baby safe." Emma stood agitated and moved to the window. Her apartment overlooked a small park where children played and joggers passed by. Normal people living normal lives, not running from death threats and criminal conspiracies. "I don't know if I can forgive you," she said quietly, not turning around. "Even if you had good reasons, even if you were trying to protect me, you still broke my heart. You made me feel worthless. You took away my choice." Julian's voice was thick with emotion. "I know. I understand if you can never forgive me. But please, Emma, let me protect you now. Let me be there for you and our baby. I'll sleep on your couch. I'll stay in a hotel across the street. Whatever you're comfortable with, just don't shut me out completely." Emma turned to face him, tears streaming down her cheeks. "I'm scared, Julian. I'm so scared. I'm supposed to be preparing for a baby, buying cribs and picking out names. Instead, I'm worried about getting killed by a corrupt businessman who sees me as a loose end." Julian crossed the room in 3 strides and pulled her into his arms. Emma resisted for a moment, then collapsed against his chest, sobbing. He held her carefully, mindfully of her belly, his hand stroking her hair. "I'm scared too," he admitted. "Terrified. But we're going to get through this. I promise you, Emma. I won't let anything happen to you or our baby." They stood there for a long time, holding each other, the space between them both familiar and strange. Emma breathed in his scent, the expensive cologne mixed with something uniquely Julian, and felt her resolve weakening. "I need time," she said finally, pulling back. "Time to process everything. Time to figure out if I can trust you again. I'll give you all the time you need." Julian cupped her face gently, his thumb wiping away her tears. "But please, let me stay close. Let me keep you safe." Emma nodded reluctantly. "Okay. But you're not staying here. You can rent an apartment in this building if there are any available. And we're going to have rules, boundaries. This doesn't mean we're back together. I understand." Julian looked like he wanted to say more, wanted to kiss her, but he held back. "Thank you for giving me this chance." Over the next few days, Julian moved into an apartment 2 floors below Emma's. True to his word, he hired an elite security team. 2 plainclothes guards were posted in the building lobby at all times, and another team monitored the parking garage and back entrances. Emma also had a personal bodyguard, a no-nonsense woman named Jennifer who had formerly worked for the Secret Service. At first, Emma chafed under the constant surveillance. But as Detective Morrison's investigation into Richard Carlyle intensified, the danger became more real. Someone broke into Emma's office, ransacking her files. Her car was vandalized in the parking garage. And then, most frightening of all, she received a package at her apartment. Jennifer intercepted it, calling the bomb squad immediately. It turned out not to be explosive, but what was inside was equally terrifying. A baby blanket, torn and stained with what looked like blood, and a note. Last warning. "Disappear, or we'll make you disappear." Emma had a panic attack when Jennifer showed her photos of the package. Julian held her while she hyperventilated, coaching her through breathing exercises until her heart rate slowed. "We need to get you out of Chicago," Julian said urgently. "Emma, this is escalating. We need to move you somewhere safe until the police can arrest Carlyle." "I can't leave," Emma protested. "I have doctor appointments. I'm supposed to start my maternity leave in 2 weeks. My entire life is here. Your life won't matter if you're dead." Julian's voice was harsh with fear. "Please, Emma, for our baby. Let me take you somewhere safe." Emma looked at him, seeing the desperation in his eyes, and felt her resistance crumble. She was 32 weeks pregnant now, her belly enormous, her ankles swollen. The stress was affecting the baby. Her doctor had warned her about high blood pressure and the risk of premature labor. "Where would we go?" she asked quietly. "I have a property in northern Michigan. It's remote, on a private lake, completely off the grid. No one knows about it except my attorney and my head of security. We could go there, just the 2 of us and a security team. Stay until after the baby is born, if necessary." Emma closed her eyes, fighting the tears that seemed to come so easily these days. She was exhausted, frightened, and despite everything, she still loved Julian. That was the hardest part. Even after everything he had done, after all the pain and betrayal, she loved him. "Okay," she whispered. "We'll go. But Julian, if you ever make a decision about my safety without consulting me again, we're done. I mean it. I need to be your partner in this, not someone you protect by pushing away." Julian pulled her close, pressing a kiss to her forehead. "Never again. I swear to you, Emma, we're in this together." They left Chicago that night, slipping out through a service entrance while decoy cars left from the front of the building. The drive north took 6 hours, winding through increasingly remote countryside, till they finally turned onto an unmarked dirt road that led through dense forest. The house was more of a cabin, rustic but comfortable, with large windows overlooking a pristine lake. The security team did a sweep of the property while Julian helped Emma inside. "It's beautiful," Emma said, standing at the window and watching moonlight shimmer on the water. "When did you buy this place? 2 years ago? I was going to surprise you with it. Bring you here for our anniversary." Julian's voice was sad. "I imagined us spending summers here, eventually bringing our kids, teaching them to fish and swim." Emma turned to face him. In the soft lamplight, he looked younger, more vulnerable. The cocky businessman facade had been stripped away, leaving just the man she had fallen in love with. "Maybe we still can," she said softly. "Maybe if we survive this, if we can find our way back to each other, we can make those dreams come true." Julian crossed the room and knelt in front of her, his hands gentle on her belly. The baby kicked against his palm and he smiled through his tears. "I love you both so much," he whispered. "I'm going to spend the rest of my life making up for what I did. I'm going to be the husband and father you both deserve." Emma ran her fingers through his hair, feeling her heart crack open. "I want to believe you, then believe me." Julian looked up at her, his eyes intense. "Give me a chance to prove it." Before Emma could respond, her phone buzzed. Detective Morrison's name appeared on the screen. She answered immediately. "Miss Sinclair, we've made an arrest. Richard Carlyle and 3 of his associates are in custody. We executed search warrants on his office and home an hour ago. We found everything. Offshore accounts, money laundering evidence, even communications about the threats against you." Emma's knees went weak with relief. Julian steadied her, his arm around her waist. "Is it over?" Emma asked. "Am I safe?" There was a pause on the other end of the line. "Carlyle is claiming he was acting on orders from a larger organization. We're still investigating, but for now, the immediate threat appears to be neutralized. You should be safe to return to Chicago." After she hung up, Emma and Julian stood holding each other for a long time. The nightmare was finally over, but the damage to their relationship remained, a chasm that couldn't be bridged overnight. "Stay here with me," Julian said suddenly. "Not because of the threat, but because I want you here. Stay for a few days. Let's just be together. No pressure. No expectations. Let me take care of you and our baby." Emma looked around the peaceful cabin, then back at Julian's hopeful face. She thought about returning to her empty apartment, to the life she had built in his absence. It had been a good life, a safe life, but a lonely one. "Okay," she agreed. "A few days. But Julian, we need to talk about everything. Really talk. About what happens next, about the baby, about whether we can ever trust each other again." "We will," Julian promised. "We'll talk about everything. No more secrets. No more lies. Just us, figuring out how to be a family." That night, Emma slept in the master bedroom while Julian took the couch, respecting the boundaries she had set. But in the morning, she woke to find him in the kitchen making breakfast, and when he smiled at her, she felt something she hadn't felt in 6 months. Hope. The morning sun filtered through the cabin windows, casting golden light across the rustic wooden floors. Emma stood in the doorway of the kitchen, watching Julian crack eggs into a bowl. He was barefoot, wearing jeans and a simple white t-shirt, his hair still messy from sleep. It was such a domestic scene, so different from the polished businessman she had been married to, that Emma felt her throat tighten with emotion. "I didn't know you could cook," she said, making her presence known. Julian turned, his face lighting up when he saw her. I learned. After you left, I couldn't stand eating out every night or having my housekeeper prepare meals. It reminded me too much of the dinners we used to make together. Emma remembered those nights. Early in their marriage, before everything fell apart, they would spend weekends cooking elaborate meals, laughing when recipes went wrong, dancing in the kitchen while sauce simmered on the stove. Those had been the happiest times of her life. I remember, she said softly, moving into the kitchen. You made terrible pasta. The noodles were always either mushy or rock hard. Julian laughed, a real laugh that crinkled the corners of his eyes. I've gotten better. I took a cooking class. The instructor was a 70-year-old Italian grandmother who smacked my hands with a wooden spoon when I did something wrong. I would have paid money to see that. Emma smiled despite herself. Accepting the glass of orange juice Julian offered her, they ate breakfast on the deck overlooking the lake. The morning air crisp and clean. Emma felt the baby moving, active as always in the mornings, and she unconsciously rubbed her belly. Can I? Julian asked hesitantly, gesturing toward her stomach. Emma nodded, and Julian placed his hand over hers. The baby kicked immediately, a strong thump against their joined palms. That's incredible, Julian breathed. Every time I feel it, I can't believe there's a whole person in there. Our person. Sometimes I can't believe it either. Emma looked down at her enormous belly. It's strange. I've been feeling the baby move for months now, but it still doesn't seem completely real. Like I'm going to wake up, and this will all be a dream. What do you think we're having? Julian asked. Boy or girl? I don't know. I told the doctor I wanted to be surprised. Emma tilted her head. What do you hope for? Julian was quiet for a moment, his hands still resting on her stomach. Honestly, I just hope for healthy. But if I'm being completely honest, I kind of hope it's a girl who looks exactly like you. Emma felt tears prick her eyes. Damn hormones made her cry at everything these days. You can't say things like that. Why not? It's true. Julian moved his chair closer, taking both her hands in his. Emma, I know I hurt you. I know I made the worst possible decision when I pushed you away, but every word I said yesterday was true. I never stopped loving you. Not for a single day. Love isn't enough, Julian. Emma pulled her hands back, wrapping her arms around herself protectively. Love doesn't fix broken trust. It doesn't erase 6 months of pain and loneliness. I know. Julian's voice was thick with emotion. But maybe it's a start. Maybe if we spend these few days really talking, really listening to each other, we can figure out if there's a path forward. They spent the morning walking around the property. The security team maintained a discreet distance, visible enough that Emma felt safe, but far enough away that she and Julian could talk privately. The forest was beautiful, autumn leaves creating a canopy of gold and red overhead. Tell me about the last 6 months, Julian said as they walked slowly along the lake shore. I saw you from a distance, made sure you were safe, but I don't know what your life was really like. Emma took a deep breath. It was hard. The first month was the worst. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. I would wake up reaching for you, and then remember you were gone. My doctor was worried about the baby. She almost put me on bed rest. Julian made a pained sound but didn't interrupt. Eventually I got angry. The anger helped more than the sadness. I threw myself into work, took on more clients than I probably should have. I found this amazing support group for single mothers. They helped me see that I could do this alone, that I didn't need you. Emma glanced at him. I'm not saying that to hurt you. I'm saying it because it's true. I learned that I'm stronger than I thought. You were always strong, Julian said quietly. That's one of the things I love most about you. You've survived losing your parents, building a career from scratch, and now this. You're the strongest person I know. They stopped at a small dock that jutted into the lake. Emma sat down carefully, letting her legs dangle over the edge. Julian sat beside her, close but not touching. What about you? Emma asked. What were the last 6 months like for you? Julian picked up a smooth stone and skipped it across the water. Empty. I threw myself into work too, but it didn't help. I would come home to that huge penthouse, and it felt like a mausoleum. Everything reminded me of you. Your coffee cup in the cupboard. Your favorite blanket on the couch. The book you were reading still on your nightstand. Kept my things? All of them. I couldn't bear to get rid of anything. Julian turned to face her. Emma, I need you to understand something. What I did was wrong. It was cowardly and arrogant. I thought I knew what was best for you, and I didn't give you any say in the decision. But it came from a place of absolute terror. When I got that first threat, when I saw those photos of you with crosshairs over your face, I couldn't breathe. The thought of losing you, of something happening to you because of me, it destroyed me. So you pushed me away to protect me. Emma's voice was flat. But Julian, you didn't protect me. You devastated me. And you know what the worst part was? Not knowing why. If you had told me the truth, if you had said, Emma, someone is threatening you, and we need to figure this out together, I would have been scared, but at least I would have understood. Instead, you let me believe I wasn't enough for you. I'm so sorry. Julian's voice broke. I replay that phone call every day. If I could go back, if I could change it, I would do everything differently. Emma wiped her eyes. The thing is, I understand why you did it. I understand the panic and fear. But understanding doesn't automatically fix things, Julian. You took away my agency. You made a massive decision about both of our lives without including me. How do I know you won't do something like that again the next time you're scared? Because I learned my lesson. Julian shifted to face her fully. Emma, I spent 6 months in hell watching you from afar, knowing I had destroyed the best thing in my life. I'm never making that mistake again. From now on, we're partners. Equal partners. Every decision, every problem, we face together. That's easy to say now, then let me prove it. Julian pulled something from his pocket. It was a small velvet box. Emma's heart stopped. Julian, what are you doing? I'm not proposing, he said quickly, seeing the panic on her face. Not yet. Not until you're ready. But I want to show you something. He opened the box, revealing Emma's wedding ring. The simple platinum band with a single perfect diamond that Julian had placed on her finger 3 years ago.
You kept it, Emma whispered. Of course I kept it. Emma, you're still my wife. Technically, we never finished the divorce. And I don't want to finish it. I want to fix what I broke. I want to rebuild our marriage into something even stronger than before. Julian closed the box and handed it to her. I'm not asking you to put this back on. Not today. But I want you to keep it. And when you're ready, if you're ever ready, I'll be here. Emma took the box with shaking hands, staring at the ring that represented both the happiest and most painful moments of her life. Before she could respond, her phone rang. It was her doctor's office, the number she had forwarded to her cell in case of emergencies. Ms. Sinclair? This is Dr. Patterson. I'm looking at your recent blood work, and I need you to come in for a follow-up appointment as soon as possible. Emma's stomach dropped. What's wrong? Is the baby okay? I don't want to discuss this over the phone. How soon can you get to Chicago? Emma looked at Julian, seeing her own fear reflected in his eyes. We can be there in 6 hours. Good. I'll have my office schedule you for tomorrow morning at 9. And Ms. Sinclair? Try not to worry. It may be nothing serious, but I want to check some things to be safe. After she hung up, Emma found she couldn't speak. She just stared at the phone in her hand, terror washing over her. Hey, look at me. Julian cupped her face gently. Whatever it is, we'll handle it. Together. Okay? You're not alone in this. They drove back to Chicago that afternoon, the security team following in a separate vehicle. Emma was quiet for most of the drive, her hands resting protectively on her belly. The baby was moving normally, which the rational part of her brain knew was a good sign, but she couldn't shake the fear that something was wrong. Julian kept one hand on the wheel and one hand clasped with hers, occasionally squeezing reassuringly. He didn't try to fill the silence with empty platitudes. He just stayed present, solid, there. They went straight to Emma's apartment. Julian wanted to come inside, but Emma needed space to process everything alone. She promised to text him after the appointment the next morning. That night, Emma barely slept. She lay awake in bed, feeling the baby move, running through worst-case scenarios in her mind. What if something was wrong with the baby? What if the stress of the last 6 months had caused complications? What if she lost this child, the one good thing to come out of all the pain? At 2 in the morning, she finally gave in and texted Julian. "Are you awake?" The response came immediately. "Yes." "Do you need me?" Emma stared at those 4 words. "Do you need me?" Such a simple question, but it held so much weight. "Yes," she typed back. 15 minutes later, there was a soft knock on her door. Emma opened it to find Julian standing in the hallway, wearing sweatpants and an old t-shirt, his hair disheveled. "I couldn't sleep either," he admitted. Emma stepped aside to let him in. They settled on the couch, Emma tucking herself against Julian's side. He wrapped his arm around her shoulders, and she rested her head on his chest, listening to his heartbeat. "I'm so scared," Emma whispered. "What if something's wrong with the baby? Then we'll deal with it. Whatever it is, we'll handle it together." Julian pressed a kiss to the top of her head. "You're not alone anymore, Emma. I'm here, and I'm not going anywhere." They stayed like that for hours, talking quietly about everything and nothing. Julian told her about the cooking class with the Italian grandmother, about how he had started seeing a therapist to deal with his fear and guilt. Emma told him about the single mother support group, about the first time she felt the baby kick, about the nursery she had slowly been setting up in her spare bedroom. "I painted it yellow," Emma said. "Gender neutral. I found this beautiful crib at a consignment shop, solid oak. And I've been collecting children's books. I must have 50 of them already." "Can I see?" Julian asked. Emma led him to the nursery. She had kept this room closed off, not wanting to share it with anyone, but now she opened the door and turned on the light. The room was small but perfect. Yellow walls with white trim. A bookshelf already overflowing with books. The oak crib with a mobile of stars and moons hanging above it. A comfortable rocking chair in the corner. Julian walked slowly around the room, his fingers trailing over the crib rail. "It's perfect," he said, his voice thick. "Emma, this is beautiful. Our baby is so lucky to have you." "To have us," Emma corrected softly. "If you want to be part of this. Really part of it. Not just visitation every other weekend, but actually involved. Midnight feedings and diaper changes and all of it." Julian turned to face her, hope blazing in his eyes. "Are you saying what I think you're saying?" "I'm saying I want to try. I want to see if we can fix this, if we can trust each other again." Emma moved closer to him. "But Julian, I need you to promise me something. Promise me that from now on, no matter how scared you are, no matter what threats come our way, you'll talk to me. We'll make decisions together. I promise." Julian pulled her into his arms carefully, mindful of her belly. "Emma, I swear to you on everything I hold sacred, I will never shut you out again. We're a team. Partners. In everything." Emma tilted her face up, and Julian lowered his lips to hers. The kiss was soft at first, tentative, like they were both afraid of breaking something precious. Then it deepened, 6 months of longing and love and regret pouring into that single connection. When they finally pulled apart, both were crying. "I love you," Emma whispered. "I never stopped. Even when I hated you, I loved you. I love you too. So much." Julian rested his forehead against hers. "We're going to be okay. All 3 of us." They went to the doctor's appointment together the next morning. Dr. Patterson was a kind woman in her 50s with graying hair and a calm demeanor that Emma had always found reassuring. "Ms. Sinclair, Mr. Bennett." She greeted them both. "Let's take a look at these test results." Emma gripped Julian's hand as the doctor pulled up charts on her computer screen. "Your blood pressure is elevated," Dr. Patterson began. "Not dangerously high, but higher than I'd like to see at 32 weeks. Combined with some protein in your urine, I'm concerned you may be developing preeclampsia." Emma felt the room spin. "What does that mean? Is the baby okay?" "The baby looks healthy on the ultrasound. Good heart rate, normal movement. But preeclampsia can be dangerous if left untreated. In severe cases, it can lead to complications for both mother and baby." The doctor turned to face them directly. "I'm going to monitor you very closely over the next few weeks. Weekly appointments, maybe twice a week if things progress. And I need you to reduce stress as much as possible. No work, lots of rest, healthy diet." "What happens if it gets worse?" Julian asked, his voice tight with worry. "If it progresses to severe preeclampsia, we would need to deliver the baby early. At 32 weeks, the baby would need time in the NICU, but survival rates are very good. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. Many women with mild preeclampsia carry to term with proper monitoring." They left the doctor's office in a daze. Emma felt numb, overwhelmed by this new complication on top of everything else they had been through. "Come home with me," Julian said suddenly. "Not to your apartment, not to a hotel. Come home to the penthouse. Let me take care of you properly. You can rest, I'll cook healthy meals, and we'll be together. Please, Emma." Emma looked at him, seeing the desperation and love in his eyes. The penthouse held so many memories, both good and bad. But maybe it was time to make new ones. "Okay," she agreed. "But I'm keeping my apartment. This isn't me moving back in permanently. This is just for the baby's health." Julian nodded, though she could see he hoped it would become permanent. "Whatever you need. Let's go pack a bag for you." Over the next 3 weeks, Emma settled into a strange new routine. Julian had converted one of the guest rooms into an office for her, filling it with comfortable furniture and anything she might need. He worked from home as much as possible, checking on her constantly but trying not to be overbearing. True to his word, Julian cooked healthy meals. He researched preeclampsia extensively, learning everything he could about managing the condition. He set up a meal plan approved by Emma's nutritionist and made sure she drank enough water and got enough rest. Emma found herself slowly relaxing, letting down the walls she had built around her heart. They fell into the comfortable rhythms of their early marriage, talking for hours, watching movies curled up on the couch, laughing together. One evening, Julian was reading a children's book aloud to Emma's belly. It was a nightly ritual he had started, wanting the baby to know his voice. Emma lay back against pillows, watching him with soft eyes. "You're going to be such a good father," she said quietly. Julian looked up, his eyes shining. "You really think so?" "I know so. You're kind and patient and loving. Our baby is lucky to have you." Julian moved up the bed to lie beside her, his hand resting on her belly. "I'm the lucky one. I almost lost both of you because of my own stupidity. I'm never taking this for granted. Either of you." Emma took his hand and guided it to where the baby was kicking. "Feel that? I think the baby likes your voice." They lay there in comfortable silence, both marveling at the life they had created together. Emma felt a sense of peace she hadn't experienced in months. Maybe even years. "Emma," Julian said softly. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course. Will you marry me? Again, I mean. I know we're technically still married, but I want to do it right this time. I want to stand in front of our friends and family and make vows to you. Real vows that I'll actually keep. I want to promise you, in front of everyone we love, that I'll never hurt you again." Emma turned to look at him, seeing the vulnerability and hope in his face. "Julian, we still have work to do. We're not fixed yet. We're still learning to trust each other again." "I know. I'm not asking you to say yes right now. I'm asking if you'll think about it. If maybe, when you're ready, we could plan a new wedding. A fresh start." Emma thought about the past weeks, about how Julian had kept every promise he made. About how he had supported her through the scary doctor's appointments, how he had been her partner in every sense of the word. "Ask me again after the baby is born," she said finally. "If we get through these next few weeks, if we can navigate new parenthood together, if you keep being the man you've been these past weeks, then ask me again." Julian's face broke into a radiant smile. "That's not a no." "No," Emma agreed, smiling back. "It's not a no." At 35 weeks, Emma's blood pressure spiked dangerously. She woke up in the middle of the night with a splitting headache and blurred vision. Julian called an ambulance immediately. The hospital was a blur of activity. Emma was admitted to the maternity ward, hooked up to monitors, given medication to try to stabilize her blood pressure. But it continued to rise. "We need to deliver the baby," Dr. Patterson said gently. "Your body is going into crisis, Emma. If we don't deliver soon, you could have a seizure or stroke. We need to do a C-section." Emma looked at Julian, terror written across her face. "It's too early. The baby is only 35 weeks. 35 weeks is good," the doctor reassured her. "The baby's lungs are developed enough. There might be a short NICU stay, but the prognosis is excellent." Julian held Emma's hand tightly. "We can do this. We're going to meet our baby today." Everything happened quickly after that. Emma was prepped for surgery while Julian changed into scrubs. As they wheeled her into the operating room, Emma felt a surge of panic. "Julian, I'm scared." "I'm right here." He squeezed her hand. "I'm not going anywhere. We're doing this together." The surgery itself was surreal. Emma was awake but couldn't feel anything below her chest due to the spinal block. Julian sat beside her head, holding her hand and talking to her softly, keeping her calm. And then, suddenly, there was a cry. A loud, healthy, angry cry that filled the operating room. "It's a girl," Dr. Patterson announced. "A beautiful baby girl." Emma burst into tears as the nurse brought the baby over, placing her briefly on Emma's chest. The baby had a shock of dark hair and Julian's nose, and she was the most beautiful thing Emma had ever seen. "Hi, baby girl," Emma whispered, kissing the soft head. "We've been waiting for you." They took the baby to be checked and cleaned while the doctors finished with Emma. Julian went with their daughter, but he kept looking back at Emma, making sure she was okay. An hour later, Emma was in recovery, and Julian brought their daughter to her. The baby was wrapped in a pink blanket, wearing a tiny knit cap, sleeping peacefully. "She's perfect," Julian said, his voice full of wonder. "Emma, look at what we made. She's absolutely perfect." Emma held their daughter for the first time properly, feeling the weight of her, breathing in her scent. "What should we name her?" They had discussed names over the past weeks but never settled on anything definite. Julian looked thoughtful. "What about Hope? Because she gave us hope. Hope that we could find our way back to each other. Hope for a new beginning." Emma looked down at the tiny face, the rosebud mouth, the delicate eyelashes. "Hope Bennett. I love it. It's perfect." They spent the rest of the day taking turns holding Hope, marveling at every tiny detail. Her miniature fingernails. The way she gripped Julian's finger in her sleep. The soft sighs she made. Detective Morrison came by late that afternoon with good news. Richard Carlyle had agreed to a plea deal. He was providing evidence against the larger criminal organization in exchange for a reduced sentence. More importantly, as part of his plea, he had provided a written confession admitting to the threats against Emma. "It's really over," Emma said, looking up at Julian. "We're safe." "We're safe," Julian agreed. "And we're together. All three of us."